The Three Trials of the Phoenix. In the heart of an ancient desert stood the legendary Phoenix Mountain, where it was said that anyone who sought true resilience could learn the secrets of the mythical phoenix, the bird that rises from its ashes, reborn stronger after every fall. Many had tried to reach the peak, hoping to gain this eternal strength, but only a few succeeded. One day, three seekers, a blacksmith named Orion, a dancer named Lyra, and a farmer named Kale, set out on the journey. Each had faced hardship and hoped that the mountain's trials would reveal the secret of how to rise again, no matter how many times life knocked them down. The mountain had three trials, each one revealing a different aspect of resilience. Though the travelers began their journey separately, their paths were intertwined, like the spiraling flames of the phoenix. The first trial lay at the base of the mountain, where the ground was scorched and the air thick with the smell of burning embers. Orion, the blacksmith, had spent his life crafting weapons and armor, but lately his work had been failing. His forge could no longer withstand the heat, and his tools had begun to break, as if mocking his once great skill. He felt like his life's work was crumbling before him. As Orion entered the trial of fire, he faced a massive forge with no tools, only raw metal. The flames roared, too hot to approach. He tried again and again to shape the metal with his bare hands, but it was impossible. The flames burned him, and the metal remained unformed. Frustrated, he sat down, feeling the weight of failure crushing him. A voice from the fire spoke, "You try to shape the metal, but it resists you. You cannot force it with brute strength. The fire will destroy what is rigid, but if you let it flow, the metal will bend to your will." Orion realized that his strength alone wasn't enough to master the flames. He had to let go of control and allow the fire to transform the metal at its own pace. With patience, he watched as the metal slowly softened, becoming pliable. He gently shaped it, not by force, but by working with the fire, not against it. When the trial ended, Orion understood that resilience wasn't about brute force or resisting hardship. It was about bending without breaking, allowing the fire of adversity to transform him into something stronger. The second trial took place further up the mountain, where the winds howled and the ground was covered in sand. Lyra, a dancer, had once been the pride of her city, known for her grace and beauty. But an injury had taken away her ability to dance as she once had, and she feared that her purpose was lost. She no longer moved with the same precision, and doubt filled her heart. As she entered the trial of wind, Lyra found herself standing on a thin platform, suspended high above the ground, with powerful gusts threatening to knock her off balance. She tried to dance as she always had, following strict, controlled movements, but each time, the wind threw her off, and she stumbled. Frustrated and afraid, Lyra sat down, feeling the sting of failure. A voice in the wind whispered, "You dance against the wind, but it is not your enemy. The wind cannot be controlled. Instead of fighting it, let it guide you." Realizing her mistake, Lyra rose again. This time, she stopped trying to control her movements. She listened to the wind and allowed it to flow through her. Her dance became free, fluid, as she moved in harmony with the wind, letting it carry her instead of resisting it. By the end of the trial, Lyra understood that resilience wasn't about returning to who she had been, but about adapting and evolving. Her injury hadn't ended her journey, it had given her a new way to dance, one that embraced the wind rather than fought against it. The final trial was at the peak of the mountain, where the soil was dry and cracked. Kale, the farmer, had once worked fertile lands, but drought and famine had left his fields barren. He had tried everything to revive his crops, but the earth refused to yield, and he feared he would lose everything. As he entered the trial of earth, Kale found a barren field. He was given a single seed and a small jug of water. The ground was hard, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't dig deep enough to plant the seed. The sun beat down, and the water evaporated before he could nourish the soil. Exhausted, Kale sank to his knees. A voice from the earth rumbled, "You plant the seed, but the earth is not ready. The drought has hardened it, and the water is not enough. You cannot force life where the soil is not prepared." Kale understood then that resilience didn't mean trying to revive what was already lost. Instead, it meant starting anew, even when the conditions weren't perfect. He waited, watching the clouds and the wind. When the time was right, he used the last of his water to soften the soil, and with patience, he planted the seed. Days passed, and the rain finally came. The seed sprouted, and Kale realized that sometimes resilience meant knowing when to wait, when to prepare, and when to act, not rushing, but trusting that the earth would give when it was ready. At the mountain's summit, the three travelers met. Each had completed their trial, but the secret of the phoenix still eluded them. As they looked to the sky, a great phoenix descended, its feathers glowing with the fire of rebirth. The phoenix spoke, "You have faced the trials of fire, wind, and earth. Each of you sought resilience, but true strength is not found in fighting against the elements. It is found in rising after the fall, in adapting after the storm, and in waiting for the earth to renew itself." Orion, Lyra, and Kale stood together, realizing that their trials had not been separate. Each had learned a different aspect of the same truth. Orion had learned to bend without breaking, allowing adversity to transform him. Lyra had learned to adapt and move with the winds of change, finding freedom in fluidity. Kale had learned to start anew, trusting in patience and preparation, even in times of drought. The phoenix continued, "Just as I rise from my ashes, you too must rise from your hardships, reborn not by resisting the fire, the wind, or the earth, but by embracing their lessons." Resilience is not about never falling. It is about rising every time you do. With that, the phoenix soared into the sky, leaving behind a single glowing feather. The travelers took it as a symbol of their newfound strength, knowing that they had been transformed by the trials, just as the phoenix is reborn from its ashes. As the travelers descended the mountain, they reflected on their journey. Though they had faced different trials, they had all learned the same lesson: resilience is not about avoiding hardship, but about growing stronger through it. The fire, the wind, and the earth had each tested them, but in the end, they had not been broken. Instead, they had risen like the phoenix, ready to face whatever challenges life would bring. And so, they returned to their lives, carrying with them the wisdom of the mountain, the knowledge that true resilience comes not from fighting against the world, but from rising above it. This story of Orion, Lyra, and Kale teaches us that resilience comes in many forms, whether it's bending without breaking, adapting to change, or starting anew. Like the phoenix, we all face trials that test our strength. But each time we rise from our challenges, we grow stronger, learning that true resilience is not about avoiding hardship, but about how we face it and rise again.